What would you do if you woke up half buried in snow, surrounded by girls with animal ears, with no idea how you got there? Because that is exactly what happened. And somehow, it only gets stranger from there. One moment, he was climbing a mountain back on Earth. The next, an avalanche had swallowed him whole and spat him out somewhere that was definitely not home. He came to lying face up in deep snow, cold eating into his bones, and for girls crouched over him, shaking his shoulders. Not ordinary girls. A small gray-haired cat girl with sharp, curious eyes. A white-haired fox girl with a careful, watchful stillness about her. A shy rabbit girl with red eyes that kept darting away from his gaze. And a golden-haired lion girl standing nearly a full head taller than him, radiating a quiet, dangerous strength. They all had animal ears sitting right there on top of their heads, as naturally as if ears on skulls were simply how things worked. He sat up, looked at them, and his brain refused to process it for a good few seconds. The language coming out of their mouths should have been incomprehensible, and yet every word landed in his head with perfect clarity, like he had always known it. Then a voice appeared inside his mind, calm, mechanical, utterly out of place. A system notification confirming what his gut had already suspected. He had been transported to another world. Not a dream, not a hallucination, not a delayed concussion symptom. Another world. The girls told him their names and their story quickly, urgency sharpening every word. They were from the Red Fox tribe, a small group that had once lived on the outer snow plains. The Black Sheep tribe had attacked without warning, their shaman tearing through the Red Fox defenses like they were nothing. Tribe members were captured, their home destroyed, and these four had been separated from the survivors by a blizzard. Now the four of them were alone in the frozen wilderness with something even worse closing in. An ice storm the locals called the ice god was coming, and it was coming fast. None of them knew where shelter was. They searched for hours across endless white plains that all looked exactly the same. The rabbit girl started crying quietly. Even the lion girl, who looked like she could wrestle a boulder into submission, had gone still and lost. The fox girl admitted out loud that without her older sister, she did not know what to do. That was the moment he decided these four were his responsibility now. He had a folding shovel in his climbing pack. He pulled it out, crouched down, and started cutting blocks from the compressed layer of snow just beneath the soft surface. He was going to build a snow shelter. The lion girl, sure, had been eyeing the shovel with barely concealed fascination since the moment it appeared. He handed it to her, and something shifted in her expression instantly. The wariness she had been carrying since they met just dissolved. She swung the shovel once and carved out a pit that would have taken him 20 minutes. He realized immediately that this was the right call. He divided up the jobs. The cat girl, Cat Knight, and the rabbit girl, White Rabbit, went to find branches and anything burnable. The fox girl, Fox 9, helped him stack snow bricks into a circle. She asked if a house made of snow would not just be cold. He told her it would be warmer inside than she expected. She did not look convinced, but she kept stacking. The storm was getting closer, a darkening wall on the horizon that moved with quiet, enormous purpose. Cat Knight still had not come back, and the unease was starting to build in his chest. Fox 9 said Cat Knight was too fast for anything out there to catch. She was right. Cat Knight came bouncing back with White Rabbit in tow, arms full of branches, plus a bundle of red berries White Rabbit had pressed against her bare stomach, under her clothes for safekeeping. Her belly was ice cold when he checked. She just said his hand felt warm. The shelter came together piece by piece, but there was one problem he had failed to account for. Sure was substantially larger than he had estimated. When she tried to crawl through the entrance, she got stuck exactly halfway in. Her legs dangled out into the open air, smooth and rapidly freezing. He grabbed her legs and pushed while the others pulled from inside, and after a considerable effort, they got her through. He stayed half outside to seal the entrance behind her, taking the hide wraps from her legs, pinning them over the opening with sticks, and packing snow around the edges until the wind stopped cutting through. Inside, it was completely dark and cramped with 5 bodies squeezed together. White Rabbit's stomach growled and she whispered she was hungry. He told everyone to move back so he could set a fire. In the dark, his hand bumped into something soft and fluffy. Someone yelped. He pulled his hand back and said nothing. Cat Knight brought him the branches. He broke them into smaller pieces, dug through his pack until his fingers found the windproof lighter he had brought for the mountain climb, and was deeply grateful for every decision that had led him to pack it. The flame caught. Light flooded the tiny shelter, and for the first time he could actually see all 4 of them clearly. Cat Knight clung to his back, asking in complete seriousness whether he was a shaman, a woo who could summon fire. He told her it was just a tool. She did not entirely believe him, but she let it go. The temperature inside climbed faster than any of them expected. Frozen fingers and toes started tingling back to life. White Rabbit shared some of the red berries with him. They tasted like frozen sugar cane. Brutally sour, but the Beast Girls seemed to enjoy them. With the fire taking up space, Cat Knight ended up curled in his lap, nuzzling against his thermal shirt, announcing it was warm. He noticed Cher sitting directly on the snow, bare legs exposed since he had taken her hide wraps for the door. He gave her his down jacket to sit on. She tried to refuse. The moment she sat on it, she stopped arguing. Fox 9 filled the time by telling him what had happened to the Red Fox tribe, how they had lived on the outer snow plains until the Black Sheep tribe appeared and shattered everything they had built. Their shaman fought hard, but the enemy shaman was stronger. Their hunting leader, Cher herself, had been beaten. Tribe members were captured, and the rest scattered into the frozen wild. Then a blizzard split even those survivors apart, leaving these for completely alone. He told them things would get better. Cat Knight mumbled sleepily that the snow house was actually warmer than the hollow rock they had been calling home, where wind blew straight through the walls. The others agreed. The fire burned down after half an hour. He told everyone he could relight it any time and suggested they sleep. Tomorrow, if the storm had passed, they would go find the rest of the tribe. He had already decided he was one of them now. They had woken him up in the snow, which in his book was more than enough to count as family. Cher shifted so he could share the jacket as a mat, positioning herself so he could rest against her legs. Cat Knight was already asleep in his arms, light as a doll. He straightened her tiny curled-up body, held her close, and let the warmth of the shelter pull him under. He woke up barely able to breathe. Cher had shifted completely in the night, and her thighs were clamped around his neck. Cat Knight had somehow forced her entire head inside his shirt, and was perfectly comfortable in that impossible position. He untangled himself carefully, not waking anyone, and saw light filtering through the snowbricks. The storm had passed, and now, for the first time since arriving in this world, he had a moment to himself. He finally checked the system. A blue panel appeared in his vision, visible only to him: a shop, complete with prices listed in points. A lighter cost 30 points, matches 5, compressed biscuits 10. He asked how to earn points, and the system told him it could trade items for points. Up to 10 trades per day, with rarer items worth more. He tested it quietly by slipping off one of Cher's worn-out shoes. 5 points. He put it back and declined the trade. A civilization building project was clearly going to take time, but he did not stress about that yet. The movement woke Cher. The others stirred too, except Cat Knight, who still had her head stuffed in his shirt and did not realize it was morning, until he forced her awake. Getting out of the buried shelter required digging through the entrance with his shovel, until sunlight poured in. Getting Cher out again required convincing her to smash through the back wall instead, which she did with one swing. The girls looked sad watching their shelter get dismantled. He told them he could build a new one every night. That helped. They set off across the snow, all 5 of them, heading in the direction Fox 9's sister had once told her to follow, toward the morning sun. Cat Knight was clingier than the day before, crawling under his arm or hanging off his back without warning. Apparently, once a cat girl fixed on a scent, she stuck to that person permanently. 3 hours of walking later, everyone was starving. Cat Knight drooped off him like a wilting plant. White Rabbit's ears had fallen flat against her head. Every stomach was growling. He spotted a bare tree jutting out of the snow and figured it might be worth something to the system. His shovel barely dented it, so he called Cher over. She hesitated, not wanting to waste a good weapon on chopping wood. He convinced her, and into swings she split the entire tree clean in half. The force was terrifying. The shovel's edge dulled slightly, so he told her to keep it permanently. Her face lit up. He had the system now, so one tool was no longer a problem. She discarded her old bone knife, and before she could throw it away entirely, he asked to see it. 20 points from the system. The half-tree trunk was worth 75. He traded the tree, and it simply vanished from the ground. Cher froze, staring at the empty space where a split tree trunk had just been sitting. He gathered everyone and told them the truth, or close enough to it. He could offer items to the gods and receive rewards in return, with rarer offerings earning better gifts. It was not entirely a lie. Cat Knight screamed with joy and threw her arms around him, declaring she had always known he was a divine shaman who could speak directly to the gods. Even quiet White Rabbit smiled. He made them all promise to keep it secret, warning them that dangerous tribes would capture him if word spread. They nodded with enormous seriousness, already constructing dramatic backstories in their heads. He told them he was asking the gods for food. All four dropped to their knees in the snow with their hands on their heads, praying. He browsed the system food section and bought 5 compressed biscuits, 1 for each person, each a different flavor. Cat Knight's nose went wild the moment they appeared. She grabbed one and bit down hard. Tears immediately welled in her eyes from the impact on her fangs. He explained these were rock hard and needed saliva to soften first. After being starved as long as they had been, even a dry compressed biscuit tasted like something miraculous. The girls licked theirs carefully after Cat Knight's mistake, and their eyes lit up at the sweet and salty layers. Cat Knight sniffed his meat-flavored one and begged to trade. He gave in. She did not care at all that he had already taken a bite. Fox 9 gave him the same pleading look, and they ended up swapping everything around. Salty for the fighters, sweet for the quieter ones. Nobody was full, but nobody was hungry either. He promised a proper meal that evening once he had traded more items. By late afternoon, they reached an area with more trees scattered around the snow. He stopped under a large one with a trunk nearly half a meter wide and set everyone to work. Sure on snow bricks, Fox 9 and White Rabbit building the snow house, and Cat Knight coming with him to gather wood. He bought an iron axe from the system and handed it to Cat Knight. She took it, grinned, reached behind herself, and pulled her gray tail out from under her skirt to wrap around the handle. Then she scrambled up the tree trunk in about 2 seconds. From above, she shouted that there was a huge amount of fruit up there. She tossed one down. A palm-sized oval fruit covered in frost, ice cold to the touch. The system valued it at 100 points. He nearly dropped it. Every random fruit he had found before was 5 points. This one was worth 20 times that. He told Cat Knight to knock down every single one she could find, and held off on trading them immediately. Something worth that much might be too valuable to sell without asking Fox 9 first. He was collecting blue striped snow fruits under the tree when Cat Knight screamed, and came crashing straight down on top of him. Her flat chest hit his face, rough for scratching like coarse fabric. Before he could ask what happened, she was already yelling about a giant snake in the tree. She scooped him up in a princess carry and sprinted toward the others without slowing at all. He looked back and nearly lost his composure entirely. It was not just a snake. A white python as thick as a barrel was sliding down the tree, blood dripping from its head where Cat Knight had apparently mistaken the fruit-like growth on its skull for an actual snow fruit and hit it with the axe. Cat Knight tripped on a snow brick and launched him through the air. Sure caught him against her chest. Considerably softer landing. She put him down, grabbed the shovel, and went straight at the python without hesitation. But even her strikes barely cut the surface. The snake's skin was armored. Fox 9 explained it was a snow python that lived underground, and used the fruit-like growth on its head as bait to lure prey, and that even sure would struggle against it alone. He opened the system shop and searched for weapons. Steel claw gloves, 120 points. He bought them immediately and slipped them onto Cat Knight's hands. Black gloves with sharp steel claws extending from each finger. She was terrified of the snake, but the moment she saw the weapon she was thrilled. He grabbed her tail to snap her out of her fear and sent her to help Sure. The python had coiled around Sure's legs, trying to crush them together. Her leg muscles were so powerful she held them apart by sheer force, while a glowing symbol blazed on her forehead. Cat Knight darted in like a shadow and clawed out one of the python's eyes. The snake screamed and released Sure. Cat Knight was still celebrating when the python lunged directly at her. Between the two of them, a blinded and bleeding python did not stand a chance. Sure grabbed its upper jaw and drove her shovel into its head over and over, while Cat Knight slashed at its body with her claws. After 7 or 8 blows, the giant snake collapsed. And now they had meat. After the fight, he found Sure standing alone looking heartbroken. The shovel, his cheap one from back home, had snapped in half from the violence of the battle. He told her not to worry. He would get her something better from the gods. He traded the broken pieces for nothing just to make the story work. Then traded 5 blue striped snow fruits for 500 points. In the shop he found it immediately. A refined horse chopping saber, 575 points, over half a meter long. He needed both hands just to lift it. Sure held it in one hand like it weighed nothing. She swung it twice, then casually sliced the python's head clean off in a single stroke. Blood drenched her from head to toe. She walked back toward the group looking like something out of a nightmare, but she was smiling. Her first real smile since the Black Sheep tribe had destroyed everything she had been protecting. She had been blaming herself for not being strong enough. Now she had something in her hand that could change that. While Fox 9 and Sure built the snow house, he stayed behind with White Rabbit to process the snake. She had been a clothes maker for the tribe and offered to turn the skin into a sleeping mat. He gave her his medical kit and toolbox to watch over. She lit up at the sight of the neat little cases and started examining every item inside. With deep concentration, he checked the snake's head. That fruit-like growth was called the blue striped snake fruit, flagged as rare by the system. Worth either 1,000 points or 100 plus a new special item unlocked in the shop. White Rabbit told him eating it was poisonous, but carried a small chance of turning someone into an awakened warrior, the strongest type of fighter a tribe could have besides a shaman. Sure was one of only 2 awakened warriors the Red Fox tribe had ever had. The other had been captured by the Black Sheep. White Rabbit went quiet talking about it. He promised they would rescue the captured tribe members once they found the rest of the group. She cheered up instantly, saying she believed in him because he was a divine shaman who could speak directly to the gods. He rubbed her long ears and went back to figure out what to do with the rare snake fruit. He traded it for the special item unlock. It revealed something called Snowflake Spirit Liquid, a drink that temporarily boosted strength and slightly increased the chance of awakening, with no side effects. The catch was 1,000 points per bottle, well beyond his current budget. He also traded the snake head for 380 points. White Rabbit skinned the entire 7-meter snake in no time, and announced she would sew the skin into a sleeping mat, so no one would have to lie directly on snow anymore. He left her to it, and went to check the snow house Fox 9 had built. It was better than his from the night before. She was smoothing every edge with her bare hands, fingers frozen red from the cold. He held her hands to warm them, then gave her a fruit knife from his toolbox and a pair of white gloves. She looked adorable with white gloves matching her ears and tail, and the tiny circle her mouth made as she blew frost off a snow fruit. To test it was the most disarming thing he had seen since waking up in this world. Cat Knight returned with a full backpack, roughly 30 snow fruits, having already eaten one on the way down. She came back carrying the skin snake across her saber like laundry on a line. White Rabbit trailing behind her, nearly buried under a freshly sewn snakeskin blanket. He had everyone help set up dinner in the pit she had dug earlier, lined with branches, with the fire going strong in the center. He bought a clay pot, 5 wooden bowls, and a wooden spoon from the system. He would have preferred to teach them to make pottery themselves, but there was no clay in sight, and the Wasteland was not the place for that lesson. He dropped the frozen snake meat into the boiling water. When salt, garlic, and ginger hit the pot a moment later, the smell that came off it stopped every beast girl in her tracks. White Rabbit stopped mid-bite on a fruit and stared at the pot with drool running down her chin. Cat Knight tried to climb over him to get to the pot. He pulled her back and pointed at Shur as a model of patience, then turned to find Shur herself leaning so close that her fur clothes were beginning to smoke. He grabbed one in each arm. 2 beautiful beast girls, and his only job right now was keeping them away from the stew. After over an hour he could no longer hold them back. He tapped each of them on the head with the wooden spoon and told them to sit in a line, with their bowls out, or they were getting fruit tonight. They sat down immediately, perfectly still, like kindergartners at lunchtime. The stew was chewy and rough by his standards, but the girls ate like they had never tasted anything so good in their lives. Cat Knight begged for the same thing tomorrow. Even Fox 9 and White Rabbit, who usually ate small portions, went back for second bowls. He felt energy surging through his whole body after eating. Something in that snake meat far more potent than anything back home. That night, crawling into the snow house, White Rabbit's snakeskin mat was a genuine improvement over bare snow. In the dark, tails got stepped on, ears got squished, and someone yelped about their tail being pulled before things settled. He told Cat Knight a story about where he came from, a place with so many people, that nobody ever went hungry. They were amazed such a place existed. He rubbed Cat Knight's ears and promised that once they found the Red Fox tribe, he would make sure no one in it would ever worry about food again. On the 3rd morning, he woke before everyone else. He set up breakfast before anyone stirred, stewing the remaining snake meat slowly with mushrooms from the system shop to get it genuinely tender. Just as he was about to take the first taste, a small mouth darted in and bit his spoon. He grabbed the intruder by the collar and lifted her up. Smaller than Cat Knight, gray-white hair, eyes wide with fear at the height. She yelled for her mom. She was someone he had never seen before. Her name was She, and she was a wanderer traveling through the snow with her mother and a small group of others. Fox 9 called them drifters, and She's face fell at the word. Tribes without a shaman were drifters, constantly bullied with no permanent home. He noticed she was terrified of Cat Knight, but not at all afraid of Shur, which seemed backwards until she told him she was a dragon cat, a chinchilla, which explained the cat fear perfectly. Cat Knight immediately took issue with the word cat being in dragon cat and glared at She, until the poor thing nearly cried. He broke it up and said there was enough soup for everyone. She said her camp was in the direction they were already heading, and asked if she could bring food back for her mother. He invited her to walk with them and told her Shur could carry raw snake meat for the group. She marched proudly at the front the whole way, already imagining herself as the hero bringing salvation home. She kept muttering about someone named Gray and how she planned to call that person stupid when she got back, but no one saw what was coming. When they got close to She's camp, they found chaos already in progress. A black-haired woman named Long was fighting a massive green fur boar, nearly 2 meters tall with huge tusks. Her stone knife had just snapped in half. A second boar had burst from the snow to cut off another member named Gray, jaws open and ready to close. Long was pinned against a fallen tree where over a dozen others were sheltering, including small children. If she moved to help Gray, the boar would crash through the tree and reach everyone behind her. She was frozen between two impossible choices. That was when Shur moved. She hurled her horse-chopping saber through the air. It flew past Gray's body and slammed into the second boar, pinning it to the ground. She was already sprinting forward, crying out for her mother. Long stared at the approaching Shur with the glowing symbol burning on her forehead, and whispered something in disbelief. Shur cut the first boar clean in half with one swing once she retrieved her saber. Long grabbed the blade from the ground, her own forehead symbol flaring to life, and split the second boar's back open before Shur could reclaim it. Shur immediately snatched the saber back. Long came forward to greet them, tried to embrace Shur in the traditional way tribal leaders greeted each other, and Shur pushed him forward instead. Before he fully understood what was happening, Long had him pressed against her in a tight embrace. Bare shoulders warm and slightly flushed from the fight, Cat Knight blurted out that he was their shaman. Fox 9 slapped a hand over Cat Knight's mouth, but it was already too late. Long's entire expression changed in a single instant. She understood exactly what having a shaman meant for her tribe. She hugged him again, harder. Cat Knight yanked him away, furious with herself. Fox 9 asked Long if she had seen a large group of around 40 people passing through. Long shook her head. She and Gray hunted this whole area, had spotted no one. Long invited them to rest at camp for the day as thanks for saving her people. She immediately bribed him with unlimited head-patting rights in exchange for more snake soup. He agreed to stay one day, not because of she's bribe, but because he had his eye on the 2 massive green boar carcasses. The meat alone was worth 600 points, the hides for 100. He crouched next to one body to appraise it and found the entire tribe had gathered behind him, staring at whatever he was doing with quiet intensity. Long crouched beside him and explained the boars, then surprised him by saying her tribe needed none of it. She knelt on one knee and asked him to become their shaman instead. He saw through it immediately. If he became their shaman, both boars belonged to her tribe by default. But when she looked up at him with that exhausted, desperate sincerity, he hesitated. He had already made a promise to Fox 9 and the others, so he turned Long down and offered her group a place traveling with them instead. She accepted immediately. Then she told him something that reframed everything. They had not come from the snowfields at all. They had escaped from a place called the Deathlands, where temperatures were dropping so fast it would soon be completely uninhabitable. Their tribe originally came from a larger group, sent out centuries ago from something called the Divine Plains tribe, to search for a divine artifact. They never found it, and were too afraid to return empty-handed. So they settled in the Deathlands instead. Recently, conditions had become unbearable, and one of their 3 shamans had helped Long's group escape, only to be captured in the process. Fox 9 set to conditions for them joining: full merger into the Red Fox tribe, and a commitment to fight the Black Sheep when the time came. She added that the final word was his, as divine shaman with the highest authority. Long knelt to him and pledged her entire group's loyalty. Just like that, before he had even found the Red Fox tribe, he had a crew of over a dozen people and a second awakened warrior. Long announced to her people that a new shaman and a new tribe had accepted them. The crowd erupted. Then Long, in her excitement, lifted him onto her shoulders. Startled, he grabbed her ears to keep his balance. Her entire body went instantly limp, and she dropped into the snow, shielding him as she fell. Same sensitivity as she about her contact. He filed that away. Once the celebration settled, he gave everyone assignments. Long and Shur to gather wood, Gray and Cat Knight to dig a large pit, White Rabbit to process the boar carcasses, everyone else to follow Fox 9 and learn snow house construction. Fox 9 thumped her chest and promised they would finish before dark. Long's people had 5 bone knives, to bone spears, some hides, and about a dozen small fruits between them. They were days away from starvation. That evening he made hot chocolate for everyone from the powder in his climbing pack. He paused before giving it to Cat Knight, remembering chocolate was toxic to cats, and tested a tiny amount on her first. She licked his finger, said it tasted weird, and lost interest immediately. He watched her nervously for minutes. She looked up at him with deep seriousness and announced she felt something wrong. She was already hungry again after 4 bowls of soup and a morning of snacking. Everyone gathered around the fire for hot chocolate. A tiny beast girl named Pine Leaf came forward, pointy ears and long messy hair, patting his hand with both of hers. While patting her head in return, something hit him suddenly. He had not seen a single male beast person anywhere. Not with Fox 9's group, not with Long's tribe. He asked Gray about it. She explained that their kind, called the divine gifted race, reproduced by eating special fruits from certain trees. No males needed. There was another species called beast folk, creatures with animal heads on human bodies, who reproduced normally and viewed the divine gifted race with deep contempt, calling them outsiders. When Gray described the divine gift fruit as red and translucent with juice visible inside, his stomach dropped. She quickly added it tasted brutally bitter to keep animals from eating it by mistake. The sour red fruits he had been eating since day one were something entirely different. He nearly collapsed with relief. Gray also told him every tree in this world could potentially grow a divine gift fruit, even dead ones. Their old settlement had 3 trees that produced 2 or 3 fruits per year. Long returned from wood gathering with something unexpected in her hands, a pale blue glowing fruit, found near a frozen lake. She called it a blue shaman fruit and urged him to eat it, saying it could increase a shaman's power. The system flagged it as rare, worth 2,000 points straight or 200 plus a new special item. He obviously was not going to eat it, so while Long was occupied with her chocolate, he traded it for the unlock. Blue spirit drink, granting a small amount of life source energy to 1,000 points per bottle. He was beginning to understand that this world ran on magic. Shamans were mages, awaken warriors were enchanted fighters, and the further he explored the system, the more it confirmed he was living inside a genuine fantasy world. He just happened to have arrived about 500 years before anyone had invented a decent weapon. White Rabbit came back with bloody hands from butchering the boars. He used all 10 daily trade slots on boar parts and other materials, netting nearly 2,000 points and bringing his total close to 3,000. He immediately started thinking about warm clothing. Some of Long's people were barely dressed, thin hides leaving arms and thighs completely exposed. They would not survive traveling like that. The system wanted 500 points for a down jacket, which was robbery. But primitive options were more reasonable. 60 points for bearskin tops, 20 for sheepskin leg wraps. That evening was a feast. A 2-meter boar plus leftover snake, more meat than 15 people could finish. Long took the first grilled piece, blew on it gently, tore off a strip, and offered it to him. Their tradition was that the shaman eats first on the day he becomes a leader. Cat Knight had been half-crouched and ready to lunge for food, but froze in complete confusion at the formality. After eating, Long spoke to him quietly. She said she had been doubting herself since they escaped the Deathlands. Every time someone went hungry, she blamed herself and wondered whether they should have just stayed. Being the only fighter responsible for keeping everyone alive had been crushing her, and she asked if she could hand leadership over to him. He told her he would take care of everyone, but she should not sell herself short. She had kept her people alive this far, and that made her a good leader. He reached over and rubbed her head. Her fuzzy ears were not as soft as she's, but they were wonderful. She teared up, bit into her meat, and seemed for the first time to actually relax. She came running over with a bowl of soup for her mother, then froze, unable to process that Long was allowing someone to touch her ears without consequence. Apparently Gray had once tried it while Long slept and lost a fistful of tail for his punishment. That night he lay awake for a long time thinking about the future. He was not a genius, and most of what he knew came from hobbies and internet videos. Building a civilization from that foundation was not realistic on its own. But the system bridged the gap. As long as he kept unlocking higher shop levels, he would always stay ahead. He fell asleep dreaming of a grand city full of happy beast girls and woke up to find he had been squeezing Long's tail in his sleep. She was blushing, but had not pulled away, her arms still under his head where it had been all night. Over the following days, camp grew, and the tribe slowly learned new things. Fire making by friction was the first lesson, and once Long's hands became a blur of speed, she had a flame in seconds. A discovery that baffled Fox 9, who managed it on her second try. Wolves appeared in the dark on the second night, green eyes circling just beyond the firelight. Long recognized the sound and started organizing a defense. He stopped her and asked instead, "Can you catch them alive?" He bought 5 large iron shovels and handed them out, telling her to leave her saber behind and only knock the wolves unconscious. If things got dangerous, lethal force was allowed, but alive, they would be far more useful. The fight was brief and decisive. Deep snow worked against the wolves whenever they missed a charge, leaving them floundering in the drifts. Sure flattened one with a shovel blow before hitting it again for thoroughness. Gray grabbed a shovel, while a wolf still had its jaws locked on the head, and swung the whole assembly into the air, slamming the wolf unconscious. Cat Knight ran around bonking wolves on the head with her axe. Like this was the most entertaining morning she had ever had. 5 wolves tied up to knock cold, 3 looking thoroughly defeated. He patted everyone's heads when they returned, and they stood with eyes closed, convinced it was a blessing. The taming process started the next morning. He held meat in front of the wolves and made a simple rule. They could only eat on his command. They lunged immediately. 5 shovel taps. He offered meat again. 5 more taps. This repeated for over 10 minutes, loud enough to wake the whole camp, until the wolves understood the situation and submitted. This world had just gotten its first dogs. 5 more days of walking, food growing scarce, when scouts came running back with news. Under a snow-covered boulder ahead, someone had dug a pit with charred wood inside and left behind supplies, hides, stone axes, dried meat. Fox 9 sniffed the cold air and identified everything immediately. It was her sister's tribe, but Long examined the scene carefully. The blood was already frozen. The snow depth suggested they had left about a day ago, and the fact that they had abandoned this much gear meant something bad had happened. Fox 9 grabbed his hand, her voice cracking. He told everyone to take the supplies and move fast. He bought a wooden sled from the system for 10 points. Nobody understood what the flatboard was for until they saw it in action. And then a small beast girl was pulling an entire load of heavy supplies across the snow, by herself with ease. Cat Knight begged for her own sled. He bought her one for 10 points. She hopped on and started pushing herself forward with a stick, laughing until she hit the downhill slope and screamed the whole way to the bottom. Her voice changed on the way down. She was calling his name, sobbing, begging him to come fast. He jumped on a sled and followed. He found Cat Knight crouched over a figure, half buried in snow under a dead tree. A white-haired cat girl, face blue-gray and lifeless, lips turning purple. Under thick furs, a deep claw wound across her chest, the blood already frozen solid. She was dying from blood loss and cold at the same time. He wrapped his down jacket around her and pressed her ice-cold legs against his stomach. The shock of that cold nearly knocked the breath from him. The system offered heating options that were useless without electricity. Then her face darkened further. She was losing oxygen, her breathing completely erratic. He tilted her head back and started mouth to mouth, pressing on her chest to keep blood circulating. Not exactly how he had imagined his first encounter with someone like this. But there was no time to think about that. When Sure and Long arrived and saw him with his lips on a stranger, he barely looked up before barking orders. Dig a pit, get firewood ready, light it now. He tossed Long his lighter and told her to press the button. No time for friction fire. The camp came down the slope and a fire roared into life beside the girl within minutes. Slowly, faintly, the white cat girl started responding. Weak movements returned, then a thin pulse. He called White Rabbit over with the medical kit and, with shaking hands, stitched the chest wound closed. He had taken a few lessons before the mountain climb, and the kit had everything he needed. But he had never sewn a wound this large before. Fox 9 had everyone build snow walls around them, while a pot of stew went over the fire. When it was done, it was done. He told everyone they were staying the night. He bought 50 pounds of potatoes from the system for 25 points, and a mountain of enormous clean potatoes appeared on the sled. She's eyes went so wide she looked like a different person. He had everyone cut the potatoes into chunks, stewed some with dried meat, and roasted the rest in the fire. He brought a bowl to the white cat girl. She had a fever now, and he was not sure if medicine from Earth would even work on beast girls. She whispered for water. When he lifted her and held the bowl to her lips, she opened her eyes. Pale blue, like looking into the ocean. She drank to full bowls before she could speak. Then she panicked, recognized Fox 9, and tried to stand up screaming that the tribe was in danger. They calmed her down and she told them what had happened. After getting separated from Fox 9's group, the Red Fox tribe had been moving east when they were hit first by snow goblins. Small pack monsters that moved in dozens, and then by a snow beast. Something enormous that lived in mountain caves. Cat White had been wounded and deliberately hid herself so she would not slow the others down. Lon explained that snow goblins feared fire, and the snow beast avoided bright light. The tribe shaman, Red Fox herself, had been using fire magic to hold them off until the firewood ran out and they had to flee. This world had ranked magical beasts, monsters, and sorcery just like fantasy stories. He had just arrived roughly 5 centuries too early to deal with any of it properly. He ordered everyone to sleep near the fire and set up rotating night watch shifts. The fire burned all night while strange sounds rustled in the dark forest around them. Earth medicine worked on beast girls and worked fast. By morning, Cat White's fever had broken and her wound was healing at a rate that would have seemed miraculous. Back home, he put her on Cat Knight's sled to travel. Cat Knight immediately started speeding up to frighten her, and Cat White threatened to stop sleeping beside her. Cat Knight just laughed and accelerated harder while Cat White screamed. They were moving again, and with every kilometer the signs of the Red Fox tribe grew fresher. Fox 9 looked like she wanted to grow wings. Then the ground shook. Fresh footprints appeared in the snow ahead. Both tiny ones from goblins and enormous ones from the snow beast. They had caught up to Red Fox's tribe. There was no time. He told Sure and Cat Knight to come with him at speed while Long led everyone else behind them. Along the tracks, he gave Long an alcohol fire bottle from the system, 600 points. Not cheap. Showed her how to light the cloth and throw immediately. Fox 9 and White Rabbit wanted to come. He sent them back. Cat Knight, impatient with his running speed, simply picked him up and sprinted full speed toward the sound of the battle. What they were racing toward was a nightmare. Red Fox had led her surviving 30-something people to a mountain cave to rest. She was exhausted and blaming herself for every person lost along the way. Then the snow goblins arrived, hired by the Black Sheep tribe to capture her. And while her people tried to fight them off, the snow beast they had been fleeing from came home. Because this was its cave. Red Fox had tried to help a white bear that also stumbled into the chaos, hoping the snow beast and the bear would weaken each other. But the goblin leader sent troops to harass the bear and tip the fight. The snow beast slammed the bear into the mountain wall. A bear girl named Little Man charged the snow beast with the bone club. One swat shattered the weapon and sent her flying. By the time he and Cat Knight were closing in, Red Fox's people were backed into a shallow cave with a dying fire, no usable weapons, a raging snow beast in front, and goblins closing in that could not truly die. They arrived at a run. Cat Knight screamed Red Fox's name. Red Fox shouted at them to run, but Cat Knight was already charging in with her steel claws, cutting through goblins like they were paper. He opened the system shop for ranged weapons, a compound bow for 1,000 points, 10 tranquilizer arrows at 20 each. Cat Knight reached the snow beast and scratched up its back. But the thing was enormous, and she barely reached its stomach. When it turned on her, she dove into the snow screaming. She tucked him under her arm like a parcel and charged straight through the goblin line. Every goblin in her path went down mid-step. She delivered him to Red Fox by literally throwing him the last few meters. Red Fox caught him against her chest, and the impact nearly bounced him back. She healed him with the green glow from her hand without asking a single question. He told her Fox 9 was safe and coming up behind them. Relief washed across her face so completely it changed her entire expression. He pulled out the compound bow, but the draw weight was far beyond him. He drank one bottle of snowflake spirit liquid. Warmth surged through his body, and suddenly he could draw it fully. His first shot hit the snow beast in the backside. Not where he had been aiming, but it got the beast full attention swinging toward him. He fired arrow after arrow while the spirit liquid lasted, tranquilizer tips sinking into chest, arms, and legs. The snow beast stumbled, movements growing sluggish. His last arrow went through its eye. The beast collapsed. Sher's forehead symbol blazed and she swung her saber through its neck. The goblins panicked and broke, but Long and the rest of the group had just arrived, cutting off every escape route. Long hurled the alcohol firebomb. It hit the ground and detonated in a burst of flame far larger and more violent than Red Fox's fireballs. Most of the goblins went down in one explosion. The goblin leader survived, but Long caught it and removed its arm. Fox 9 came running through the smoke and threw herself at Red Fox. The older sister finally broke down crying, holding her little sister tight, not letting go. When things had settled, he picked up a goblin core stone from the ground and traded it to the system, right in front of the goblin leader. It vanished completely. He asked the leader if it could still sense that comrade. The smug expression crumbled instantly. The connection was not hidden or sleeping. It was gone from existence entirely. He traded a few more cores to drive the point home. Now the goblin was willing to talk. It said a large tribe near the gazing snow mountains was capturing shamans from smaller tribes, and had hired the goblins to grab Red Fox. He kept his word perfectly. He said he would not personally lay a blade on it. Then he turned to Long and told her the goblin was hers. The leader screamed that he was a liar and a demon as Long's blade ended the conversation. He technically had not broken his promise. Red Fox formally met Long and welcomed her group, then went stiff with formality when she learned he was supposedly a divine shaman. She addressed him with deep respect that made him uncomfortable. He told her he was not sure about the divine part. She insisted Fox 9 had told her everything, and that receiving gifts from the gods was the very definition of a divine shaman. She tried to rename the tribe after him. He shut that down immediately. He told her every person in their tribe was as precious as a star in the sky, so they would call themselves the Star Tribe. A bit dramatic, but anything was better than hearing his own name announced every morning. Red Fox agreed with a faint smile. Then someone shouted that the white bear was still alive. It was barely breathing, covered in wounds. He figured a living bear was more valuable than bear meat. Through Little Man the Bear Girl as translator, he told it simply, obey him and get fed every day, or die here. Red Fox doubted it would work without magic. He told her nobody refuses free food and shelter. The bear weakly nodded and licked Little Man's hand. White Rabbit stitched its wounds closed with an audience of fascinated beast girls, watching every stitch. He looked around at the mountain base. Trees, likely game higher up, a solid defensible position. This was good enough to call home, at least for now. And that is when it all fell apart. Because Red Fox's people were 50 strong, and the mountain cave was built for 10. They would need real shelter, real walls, and real weapons before they could do anything that actually mattered. Over the next week, camp grew into something he had not expected to build this quickly. Fox 9 led snow house construction while he figured out log cabin joinery. From system downloaded knowledge, wood building memories flooded into his mind for 800 points, and within one afternoon, the tribe had its first solid wooden structure beside the frozen lake. A small bathing cabin for square meters, with an iron tub that materialized from the system and scared every armed beast girl in the camp when it crashed down from nothing. After more than 10 days without washing, he climbed into that tub with the hot water climbing around him and nearly dissolved with relief. Archery training began with Fox Eye leading for recruits into the forest, where she shot a handmade bow's arrow through a tree trunk on her first real attempt. At a moving distance, Sher's ironwood bow, bought for 1,200 points, fired arrows that punched clean through wood and destroyed themselves on impact. Fox 9 mastered pottery by downloading the knowledge straight into his brain from the system, then handed off the craft to the tribe and had them producing clay pots by the following morning. Fishing at the frozen lake solved the food problem temporarily, with Sher catching a 2-meter fish after a battle of wills that ended with her throwing it into a tree. Inside that fish was a pearl worth 1,500 points straight, which he traded for a special unlock instead. Cod Kingfish brewing powder, codfish flavor, 3 hours of underwater breathing. Disgusting taste, potentially useful. She's little squad of children invented spike pit traps by observing his fence post, and used them to catch a snow crystal bull, something even experienced hunters would have hesitated to face. 3 new arrivals, a wolf girl named Rebel Moon who refused every order, a rabbit girl named Sad Moon who cried at everything, and a koala named Lazy Moon who fell asleep while tied up as a prisoner, turned out to be scouts, sent by the Black Sheep tribe, then abandoned by it. Red Fox vouched for all 3 and said they were worth keeping. And after 20 minutes of foot tickling that broke even Rebel Moon's iron will, he had the full picture of what was coming. Someone near the gazing snow mountains was summoning shamans from every tribe they could reach, and every shaman that returned came back changed. The Black Sheep's own shaman, once kind enough to take in homeless beast girls from destroyed tribes, had gone to those mountains and come back an entirely different person. Whatever was up there was not inviting shamans for a conference. It was rewriting them. 30 pig folk with a berserker and a bone shaman with animal control turned out to be living directly across the frozen lake, which he discovered only when She's trap squad dragged one home stuck to a spike pit. He squeezed everything out of the prisoner, then set a trap of his own. He had the whole tribe dig a field of spike pits along the path between camp and the lake, with Foxy's archers in a trench behind the kill zone, and Sher's melee fighters waiting on both flanks. He used the pig folk prisoner as bait, tied behind the trap field with a gag made from his own hide. The bone shaman brought everyone, all 30 pig folk warriors and all 11 moss-mane boars, exactly as he had calculated. The boars charged the trap line and dropped into spike pits one after another. Some face first onto bone spikes, others stuck at the edges unable to pull free. Sher's ironwood bow punched through a pigman's skull from across the field. The bone shaman panicked and cast a berserk enhancement that swelled every warrior's muscles red. Red Fox answered with a fireball that hit the shaman in the back and broke the spell mid-cast. He lit a string of firecrackers and hurled it into the herd. The detonations scattered the berserk boars in every direction, trampling their own side. Tusk, the enormous pigman who led the charge, hauled himself bleeding from a pit and swung his stone hammer at Grey. Long blocked it with her dual swords, and the 2 awakened warriors worked around him in the tight, precise rhythm of fighters who had trained together for years. The bone shaman tried to negotiate from the back of its lead boar, speaking in a raspy, surprisingly sincere voice about shared hardship and splitting resources. He kept asking it to remove the bone mask. It refused. He asked again. It tried changing the subject. He asked again. It offered cave space. He asked again. It snapped and cursed at him, and that told him everything. Whatever was behind that mask was the most important thing on this battlefield, and the shaman would do anything to keep it hidden. The battle ended with the bone shaman staring at its crumbling army, pits full of dead and wounded, berserk boars stampeding their own troops, 2 awakened warriors cutting through the front line, and archers in a trench that turned every spear throw into wasted effort. Red Fox's interrupted fireball had done its work, and the berserk enhancement had collapsed halfway. And somewhere behind the bone mask, the shaman began to understand that it had walked directly into exactly the kind of trap it had never been prepared to face. The Star Tribe had fought its first real battle against a coordinated enemy force, and survived it with fewer casualties than anyone could have predicted. Not because they were the strongest force in the frozen wastelands, but because one man with a folding shovel, a system shop, and a few weeks of terrible improvisation had turned a group of cold and starving refugees into something that thought before it swung. The captured pig folk were processed quietly. White Fang, the prisoner who had tried to lure them into an ambush, watched his own father's charge fail from a post behind the kill field, gagged with his own hide, and understood fully what he had walked into. The bone shaman's mask came off eventually. What was underneath it would matter later, when the question of who was controlling the shamans of the gazing snow mountains had a face to go with it. For now, the Star Tribe had a frozen lake, a wooden bathhouse, an iron bathtub, 5 domesticated wolves, 1 recovering bear, a working pottery production line, 10 functional bows, a field of spike traps, and a fence around the camp. It was not yet an empire. But 2 weeks ago, he had been a half-frozen stranger that for beast girls had dragged out of the snow. Progress was progress. Rebel Moon decided she wanted the awakening power badly enough to ask him directly. Her pride no longer stronger than her need. She had seen what happened to the people the changed black sheep shaman had thrown away, and she was not going to let that be the end of the story for any of them. Sad Moon declared these were the best days of her life. Warm shelter, full meals, no fear. Even Lazy Moon stayed awake long enough by the campfire to say the fish was better than anything she had eaten in her old home. She sat at dinner with her compressed biscuit reward held up like a medal, surrounded by the little ones who had helped dig traps and skin a snow crystal bowl, and contributed to a battle they were too small to fight indirectly. She broke the biscuit into pieces for everyone around her without being asked. Fox 9 sat with her new clay pot and a small figurine she had made of him, slightly lopsided but recognizable, and told him she wanted to learn to brew fruit wine next. He promised her. White Rabbit sat in the firelight teaching Long's younger girls to sew with real needles. Steady and patient, nowhere near as fragile as she had seemed that first night in the snow with her bare stomach, pressed full of frozen red berries. Cat Knight was somewhere in his cabin again. She had been extra clingy since the bathhouse. He chose not to think too hard about that. She sat sharpening her saber by the fire, its repaired blade looking better than the day he had bought it. She glanced up once when she thought he was not watching, then looked back down at the blade quickly. Red Fox stood at the edge of camp looking out at the snow-covered mountain range, stretching beyond their little fence. She had not smiled much since before her mother disappeared. She was smiling now. She told him later that every burden of running the tribe had landed on her alone when her mother left, and she had buried her own desire to go find her deep, putting the tribe first. Now that he was here, she finally felt she could let someone else carry part of the weight. Once they rescued the captured tribe members, she planned to go look for her mother at last. He sat down by the fire that evening and wrote out the list. Short term, finish the fence, expand archery training, build proper barrels for fruit wine, secure the area around the lake, deal with the remaining pig folk carefully. Medium term, rescue the Red Fox tribe's captured members, absorb more scattered tribes, find rare items to unlock the level to shop. Long term, push back against the Black Sheep tribe, identify and dismantle whatever was operating out of the gazing snow mountains, and find out what happened to every shaman that went up there and came back changed. The threat of the mountains was real and growing. Something up there was systematically dismantling the tribes of the frozen wastelands, from the top down, capturing their leaders, their magic users, and sending them back as different people. He did not know how powerful a real divine shaman was. He did not know what was behind the bone mask or what it had been hiding. He did not know what a level to shop could unlock, or how far the system could take him against genuine magic. What he did know was that the Star Tribe was 20% of what it needed to be in terms of fighters, and probably 10% of what it needed in terms of equipment. He also knew that 2 weeks ago he had nothing except a folding shovel, a windproof lighter, a box of chocolate powder, and a system that started him with 0 points. He had built something from that. Not through genius, not through hidden powers, not through some destiny written in the stars the tribe was now named after. Through paying attention, through asking which tree was worth the most points, and which wound needed stitching first, and whether a wolf could be trained with patience and a shovel, and what a group of desperate people needed more than strength right now. The answer was almost always the same. Someone who would not leave. The fire crackled, the wolves snored near the logs, and Big Man the bear shifted in his sleep somewhere at the edge of the camp, wounds closing day by day, choosing warmth over the mountain. Fox Sai was already up early running target practice in the dark with her detachable iron arrowheads, pulling real range out of a handmade bow by the light of a single torch. Long was awake too, sitting close enough to the fire to read the expressions on sleeping faces. The same vigilance she had maintained every single night, since leading her people out of the Deathlands, finally balanced by something she had not expected to find: trust. He was not going to stop building this. Not for the Black Sheep tribe, not for the unknown threat in the mountains, not for any version of this world that thought the frozen wastelands were a place where small groups came to disappear. He had come here with a folding shovel and a lighter and 5 points to his name. Whatever was waiting at the gazing snow mountains had armies, magic, and a system of control that reached across every tribe in the frozen wastelands. But it did not know he was here. It did not know about the spike pits, the 10 bows, the barrel of fruit wine that was still 3 failed attempts away from existing, the bear that was slowly learning to trust a stranger who could not even lift the sword he carried. It did not know about Rebel Moon, who refused every order, except the ones she had decided were worth following, or she who could invent a spike trap from watching fence posts go into the ground. It did not know about Fox 9, who had spent 3 days staring at ruined dirt bowls before a solution appeared, and then mastered it in 1 afternoon and handed the knowledge to 20 other pairs of hands before nightfall. It did not know about any of them. That was the advantage. Not the system. Not the snowflake spirit liquid or the compound bow or the iron tub that had scared armed women into drawing their weapons at empty air. The advantage was this group of beast girls who had been told their whole lives that small tribes disappear, that shamans are rare, that the wasteland is where you go when you have nothing left, and who had decided, 1 bowl of stew and 1 compressed biscuit at a time, that they were not going to disappear. He looked at the star-filled sky above the mountain. No moon in this world, just stars pressed so thick and close they looked like something had spilled across the dark. The Star Tribe. It was a little dramatic, maybe, but the name was right. Every person in that camp had been 1 bad night away from vanishing into the snow, and every single one of them was still here, fed and warm and learning something new every morning. That was enough to build an empire from.